So good morning, everybody. Welcome to our last 2025 forum meeting for the year of 2021. It's hard to believe we're going to be going to 2022 here before we know it. So anyway, my name is Steve Van Dorn, President and CEO of the Chamber. I want to welcome you to our committee meeting. This is where we talk about the items that we have outlined in our Mission 2025 mission and vision document. And so we're pleased to have Alex DiGiorgio. Do I have that right, Alex? Did I get that right?
Bravissimo.
Okay, good. And Alex is with the city's newest partner, EBCE, East Bay Community Energy. He's their public engagement manager. And you've probably been seeing a lot of information from them in your mailbox. And Alex is going to talk to us about a new program that's going to be starting in the new year. So Alex, I will give it to you. We have about an hour at the most. If we finish early, that's always a good thing. So we'll start it out with Alex's presentation, and then we'll go to questions. So let me make sure you can, if you need to use the screen, you can. I'm not sure if you're sharing anything, Alex, this morning or not. So it's all yours. Welcome.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you. Yeah, I do have a PowerPoint that our team has put together. With this small of a group, we don't necessarily need to use it, but I think it might be helpful just to kind of show, to illustrate what changes will be coming. So if you don't mind, I will click on share screen.
For Alex, we need pictures.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
I thought that might be the case. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for a moment.
You should be okay. You should be okay, Alex. Yeah.
Cool. I'll pull up that PowerPoint. Just bear with me for a moment here. Let's see if this works.
There we go. I can see it.
Great. I'll hide these. Great. That's all right. Everyone can see so far so good?
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, so this morning we'll be talking about the service plan updates for the city of Pleasanton. And it's not just the city of Pleasanton, it's actually multiple cities that are member jurisdictions of our Joint Powers Authority at East Bay Community Energy. And these service plan updates will involve a transition to a new default service. And that will be a default to our 100% renewable energy option, which we call Renewable 100. And what this means is that any accounts that are open in the city will transition to this option, the 100% renewable option, and any future new accounts that open, they'll default to this as well. People still have options, so people can opt for a less renewable but also less expensive option, which is called the Bright Choice option. I'll get into that too. They can opt out of EBC entirely to return to PG&E's energy supply, although they'll be paying slightly more for it. And I'll go over all of these options, but there are still options. This isn't a mandate of any kind, but there has to be a default option in our member jurisdictions. By law, the default has to be one of the community choice agency's options, but that doesn't mean that people don't have other options. So just for a little bit of background, East Bay Community Energy, we are a local government agency, and our mission is to provide our member jurisdictions with more renewable energy at lower rates. And with our net revenues, so we're a not-for-profit entity in the sense that we're a local government agency. So our net revenues are reinvested in the community to create local jobs, energy-related jobs, but not all energy-specific jobs, to provide customer programs around energy usage, such as energy efficiency and electric vehicle charging infrastructure incentives, and to catalyze sustainable development generally. And that would involve everything from projects for renewable power generation, or, as I mentioned before, electric vehicle charging infrastructure, also things like transitioning away from natural gas when it comes to building electrification and things of that sort. And just so everyone's clear on who we serve, EBC's member jurisdictions are the County of Alameda, which really had the primary role in forming the agency in 2018. Or actually, the agency was formed in late 2016, but began service in 2018. So we serve Alameda County, all of its cities, and the city of Tracy in San Joaquin County. So for a little bit of electricity 101 here. So all EBCE customers are still PG&E customers for everything except for the source of the energy. So EBCE has its own power supply portfolio, which is a minimum of 5% more renewable than PG&E's standard supply, and at a rate that is 1% less for our standard option, with the Bright Choice option. But all of that power still gets dispatched to the grid that PG&E manages and delivered that way to our customers. So when you look at your PG&E bill, you'll see different line items for the costs of the transmission and distribution of the energy and the generation of the energy. So people will still get their bills from PG&E. What will be different with our customers is that the line item for the generation charges will identify EBCE there in that line item. And those aren't additional charges. Those are replacement charges for what folks would have otherwise paid for PG&E's energy supply. And so again, we try to emphasize to folks that you will still get your bill from PG&E. All billing services are handled by PG&E. PG&E still manages the lines and wires. So if you have an outage, you'd still be calling PG&E. The difference would be with our customers is that you'll be purchasing from our energy supply portfolio, and your rates will, in most cases, be 1% less than PG&E's, unless you're on the Renewable 100 option, which costs a little bit more. And I'll get into those details, but spoiler alert, it's a penny per kilowatt hour more for most homes. That's about $5 more per month. For businesses, it really varies on usage since it's a volumetric premium. For most small businesses, it's about $15 to $20 more per month to be on that 100% renewable option. So I've already kind of discussed a little bit about what the options are. Again, some more recent history, we used to have a third option, what you see in the middle here, the Brilliant 100 option, which was a carbon-free option that was priced at parity with PG&E. And when I say carbon-free, what I really mean by that is it involved a lot of large hydroelectric resources. In the state of California, large hydroelectricity doesn't count as renewable, so it's not. It doesn't satisfy the requirements of the state's renewable portfolio standards, and that was largely just because most large hydroelectric facilities that could be built had already been built. And the goal of the renewable portfolio standard was in part to help catalyze more renewable energy development. And when I say large, what counts as large hydroelectricity is anything over 25 megawatts, which is actually quite large. So due largely to the mega drought, large hydroelectric resources in the state of California are actually a diminishing resource, sadly. And for that reason, this option, the Brilliant 100 option, was no longer cost effective to offer to customers. In addition to the fact that large hydroelectric resources have been diminishing, there's also been a bit of a run on them, because in 2018, when EBCE first launched service as the largest community choice aggregation agency to date at that time, there were several other agencies that were forming or expanding. Marin Clean Energy, for example, which was the first community choice aggregation agency in the state, it has since 2010, it has grown to include Napa, Contra Costa, and Solano counties. And so, like EBCE, a lot of the other community choice agencies wanted to offer a carbon-free option at price parity with PG&E. So at the same time, you have supplies dwindling, you have demand skyrocketing, and that all led to Brilliant 100 no longer being cost effective. For Pleasanton, this was particularly impactful because when Pleasanton enrolled with EBCE, Brilliant 100 was the default option that the city council had requested for the city. So for the city's first year or so of service, by default, everyone was purchasing Brilliant 100, which was great, except that it wasn't going to last. So today, this is why in Pleasanton, the default is changing, primarily because the city of Pleasanton, like the city of Albany and Hayward, was defaulted to the Brilliant 100 option. And so the city council had a tough choice on what to make the new default when Brilliant 100 closed, and they chose the Renewable 100 option. So no more Brilliant 100. These are now the options for the city. By default, all residential customers and commercial customers will transition to Renewable 100 starting in January, on their meter read date in January. So most folks won't really notice anything different. The lights aren't going to shine any greener, although the energy that powers them will be 100% renewable unless folks choose another option. So, and of course, as I said, people can opt out if they want to return to PG&E's energy supply. With the big difference there with EBCE is that it's less renewable, but probably the more salient difference is that it's a large amount of nuclear resources in PG&E's energy supply currently. About a little less than half is nuclear power from the Diablo Canyon plant. That's going to change because that plant is scheduled for closure starting in 2024. But for the time being, that's the main difference as far as the resource supplies go. So, as I mentioned before, the cities of Albany, Hayward, and Pleasanton all had Brilliant 100 as their original default, and this is a little bit confusing, but hopefully it'll be clear. The Brilliant 100 service was closed in July of 2020, so that means that new accounts would no longer be defaulting to Brilliant 100. They would default to the Bright Choice, the option that's 1% below. The rates are 1% lower than those of PG&E, and the renewable energy content is 5% higher. So there were some customers in the cities of Pleasanton, Hayward, and Albany that did default to the Bright Choice option. So starting in July 2020, so there will be some customers who will transition from Bright Choice to Renewable 100. So the price difference for them will be a little bit more, since they're going to not only start to pay a penny per kilowatt hour more for their electricity, but they're also no longer going to have that 1% rate discount. That doesn't affect a whole lot of customers in Pleasanton, but wanted to make sure that people are aware of their options, so that if they want to retain that 1% discount, they know that they have that option, and then they can do so online or by phone. So as far as the schedules go, I wanted to mention that, so in Albany, Hayward, and Pleasanton, I've been saying all commercial and residential customers are going to transition to Renewable 100 unless they make another option. The one exception there are customers that are on low income discount programs, such as CARE or FARA, and those are residential customers. And same thing with medical baseline customers that are on the medical baseline program. Those customers will all transition to Bright Choice, so they'll still have that 1% rate discount. And the other cities that are also going to be transitioning are listed here. So Albany, Hayward, and Pleasanton are all transitioning in January. The city of Dublin is joining this illustrious group for the residential customers. And this was not because this didn't have anything to do with Brilliant 100, that option sunsetting and closing. This was just because the city of Dublin really wanted to make some rapid progress in their greenhouse gas emissions reductions. So the city council there voted to transition all residential customers to the Renewable 100 service. And it made sense in terms of timing to go ahead and include the enrollment of those customers with those of Albany, Hayward, and Pleasanton. And then good ideas tend to catch on. So the cities of Berkeley and San Leandro have also made, their city councils took similar votes, all unanimous as I remember. And so our board approved that as well for Berkeley and San Leandro. Those transitions are going to occur in March for residential customers, and then in October for commercial customers. So there are about half of our cities at this point are going to be served by 100% renewable energy starting in 2022. Although some, like Pleasanton, that transition will start in January. Others, it'll be staggered starting in March, and then for commercial customers in October. And it's possible more cities will kind of join in the meantime. More city councils may take similar votes. Let's see. So there are some exceptions here. Any businesses that had already switched to Bright Choice, if they had already used their options to opt for the more cost-effective choice, the Bright Choice option, they won't be included in the transition. So any residential customers and any businesses that have already made an affirmative decision that they don't want the 100% renewable, more expensive option, they won't be included in transition. So folks don't need to go back and make their choices again. We have records of who's made these choices already, and so we're not going to be messing with people's service plans if they've already made an option. But for folks who do want to avoid and who learn about this transition and who want to avoid having any renewable 100 charges, we're encouraging them to make that decision before the 22nd of this month, just so that they avoid the automatic enrollment. There is no deadline to make these choices. So folks can request to choose a different option at any time. But if they wait until after December 22nd or so, they will be automatically transitioned. So they will be on the renewable 100 rate until they request otherwise. So if folks if they know now that that's not what they want, they don't want to pay that penny per kilowatt hour premium for any amount of time, it's better to opt for a different choice sooner rather than later. Now, very familiar but still somewhat mystifying is the PG&E bills. So I'm going to go over a PG&E bill here with you, just to make sure that everyone's clear on where to look on your bill. So you'll notice on the right, we've circled where that line item for a Bright Choice customer, in this case, where that line item would be. You can see that customer is paying a little bit less, that 1% discount. In this case, it doesn't amount to a lot month to month. In this case, it's 48 cents. But actually over time and collectively, that rate discount amounts to quite a bit. In fact, collectively, EBC has saved electricity customers about $10 million a year, so close to $30 million at this point since we began service. And the primary beneficiaries of those customers are businesses, because they tend to use more energy per capita than residential customers. So I'm just pointing this out for reference so folks know where to look, where your rate schedule is listed on the bill. It'll be right under the dates of your meter read dates there for the billing cycle. And then it'll be in a line item. It'll identify what option you're currently on. And then if you do transition to renewable 100, or you choose to make no changes or make no other request no other options, you'll be automatically enrolled, and so you'll see the renewable 100 charges will be listed also as a line item charge. So how to choose the plan, you can do so on your website. It's probably the most straightforward way of doing it. You can also do so by phone, but if you go to our website, we have a landing page for each of these 3 cities, actually 4 if you include Dublin, but for commercial customers, it's just 3. We have a landing page for each city. So folks in Pleasanton can go to ebc.org/Pleasanton, and there you can just click on the business icon, and you can go ahead and make your choice if you want to change rate plans, or if you want to choose a different option than the renewable 100 option. It'll be facilitated a lot quicker if you have your PG&E account number handy. So make sure to have that on hand to type that in on the web form. So again, these are the options now, folks. The only wrinkle with the timing of options, if folks opt out of EBC service after 2 months of service. So for most established customers, this has already happened. By PG&E's terms and conditions, you'll be required to stay with PG&E for a year until you can return to EBCE service. So that is the one wrinkle there. For folks that choose to opt out, you'll be committing for a year of being on PG&E's energy supply portfolio. Aside from that, if you want to choose between EBC's options, there's no waiting period or time limit to do that. It may take a billing cycle or two for our team to cross over the from one service to the other, but that's all. It should only be 1 or 2 billing cycles. So the dates to keep in mind. So by December of January 22nd, that's the last point at which folks can avoid any Renewable 100 bill charges and avoid the transition entirely. For everyone else, by January, by the meter read date of each account, will be transitioned to Renewable 100. So over the course of January, all residential and commercial customers will transition, aside from those who've already chosen a different option or who are on those low-income discount programs. But it's not that everyone changes at once. It's according to each billing cycle of each account, so each meter read date. So week over week, there will be accounts that will transition. And then in February is when folks will see those first bill charges for their new service, whether it's Bright Choice or Renewable 100, and unless folks make a different option. So again, when you look at your bill, or when those in your networks look at their electric bills in February, unless they've made another choice, they'll see the Renewable 100 there on their bill, and they'll see the charges that go with that. So I think we already covered this. You can request a switch from Renewable 100 to Bright Choice anytime. It takes about 2 billing cycles. So there really is no deadline for doing this, unless you want to avoid those initial Renewable 100 charges. So how much more will it cost? Again, I mentioned for residential customers, we're trying to hedge on the more conservative side, and we're telling people $5 to $7 more per month. It's honestly, in most cases for residential customers, it's less than that. The average usage in our service area is about 400 kilowatt hours per month. So a penny per kilowatt hour there is really more of a $4 charge. But these are averages spread across the year, and obviously people's bills go up and down depending on the weather and other factors. So for commercial customers, generally between 5 and 7 on the more conservative side. For businesses, it really can vary since the usage with businesses vary. There are many more commercial rate schedules than residential rate schedules because businesses come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. But so here are the general averages that we have for small, medium, and large customers. And so you can see that for most small businesses, it looks like it's going to be about a little more than $20 more per month. But for medium businesses, we're getting into the hundreds of dollars per month. And then for the larger businesses, that penny per kilowatt hour really adds up. So it can be thousands of dollars more per month. And in some cases, businesses are comfortable with this because they want to be on 100% renewable energy. But if they aren't comfortable with that, then we want to make sure that they know what their options are and that they can switch to the cheapest option, which would be the Bright Choice option. And I think that's the end of the slides. Yep. And so I'll stop sharing screen and I'll take some questions, assuming there are some. I hope I haven't put anyone back to sleep yet.
Thank you, Alex. That was great. I'll open it up for questions. Please just go ahead and speak because we got a small group today. So
I have a quick question. I actually have to jump to run somewhere here in a few minutes, but Thank you for the presentation. And so since power is still going to be delivered through the PG&E infrastructure, then I guess reliability and all that is going to be the same as it always was, right? In other words, if there are power outages and all that, that will be the same as ever, right?
Yep. Nothing there is changing. The only thing I'll mention is that EBCE does have a program to help residential, municipal, and commercial customers install solar plus battery storage. So that program would help folks, weather outages. But yeah, aside from that program, nothing's going to change with reliability.
Hey, Alex, this is Ken Norvell. So
Hi.
2 questions. First one, do we really have the infrastructure to support 100% solar and wind? I mean, because it seems like that it's such a small percentage of our power generation right now that I wonder, if you sign up for the 100% renewable, is it really coming from that? And what happens when there's not enough?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that we get. So yes, there is enough power, but when we talk about being on 100% renewable energy, we're talking about over an annual basis, not an hourly basis. So over the course of the year, EBCE and other CCAs or even PG&E with their own programs, we'll guarantee that we can procure an equivalent amount of renewable energy, largely wind and solar, over the course of the year to match our customers' usage individually and collectively. So over the course of the year, yes, there's actually more than enough renewable energy. There's so much solar energy at times during certain seasons, during certain times of the day, that they have to curtail it. So the issue now is actually one that's more of timing, and this is why PG&E and others are transitioning to what they call time of use rates. So from an hourly basis, it's not necessarily that the electrons that are coming are all from wind or solar. I can guarantee you that they're not, but it's on a volumetric basis over the course of the year. And this is nothing new with EBCE. When PG&E or any utility kind of shows you what their power supply is and breaks it down by percentages, that's over an annual basis, not an hourly basis.
I guess the same would hold true for the fact that solar doesn't generate much at night, and neither does wind for that matter. So either you've got huge banks of batteries, which I know we don't yet have, or like you say, it's prorated or whatever you want to call it over a long period of time, I guess.
Yeah. And it really comes down, this is kind of technical, but it's the difference between kilowatt hours and electrons. Kilowatt hours are what we use in the energy business to account for our customers' usage, and it's what we procure. Electrons are actually the physical property that turn on and off the light. And so again, depending on geography and timing, the electrons can vary a lot on what's powering a given home or business. But on a procurement basis, we can make sure that all of our customers are served by renewable energy because we're procuring that same volume of renewable energy and dispatching that to the grid.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
It's kind of about what goes into the grid, not what comes out of the grid, if that makes any sense.
Alex, thank you for being here this morning. Great presentation.
Thanks.
Did I hear you say on the first slide that EBCE is a nonprofit? Is that right?
So we're a local government agency. So we're a nonprofit in the sense that we don't have shareholders. We don't, we operate like any other government agency does. We're not a 501c3. So
Okay.
we're a joint powers authority. So you could think of us as like a school district, but for energy instead of education. We're kind of like the public option for energy administered at the local level.
Okay. And when you, go ahead.
In case it's helpful, our board of directors is composed of locally elected leaders from each jurisdiction that we serve. So our board of directors has a mayor, a council member. In Pleasanton, city council member Kathy Narum is our board representative for the city.
Oh, great.
So so we're a government agency.
Okay. And when you said you reinvest the earnings back into the community, Can you please give us some examples of that?
Sure. So for one, we provide grants of various kinds, but really it's with the development of projects and programs. So one fine example is what you see behind me in my background. So this is at the Altamont Pass that was repurposed to and expanded for renewable generating capacity. So the rates that our customers pay, more than 90% of those go right back into power procurement. And as much as possible, we're procuring locally. So trying to develop local renewable generating capacity, which is also important for what's called resource adequacy. So to help prevent with the outages, that if we have more local generating capacity and local storage capacity, which we're also developing, then that will help insulate our communities from blackouts. So our net revenues go back to purchasing power, developing projects, and then also programs like the one I mentioned about battery storage. So we have a program called the Resilient Home Program, which is designed to get solar and battery storage to residential customers. Started off serving or offering that to low-income customers, and those honestly who are on medical baseline, because they were the most impacted by the power safety shutoffs. But that program is available to all residential customers. We're still developing it for commercial customers, but that's another example of how we're trying to take ratepayer dollars, keep them in the community, because all of those installations, whether it's solar or batteries or both, those are local jobs that are created here that aren't being outsourced.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I appreciate it.
Hey, Alex, on that topic of the Resilient Home Program, I put in an application a couple of times, and you know, it's been tough to get anybody to get back to me. I think you did after I putzed Zach Rita a little bit on that. But what is your customer service, you know, looking like around those kind of programs? If the city or the chamber promotes those, you know, and people apply, we want, you know, some response, you know, coming from EBCE. What are you guys ramping that up a little bit, or what does it look like on the customer service side?
Yeah, we are. So there, and I'm sorry if you're still, are you still waiting to hear back from more? Is it still moving slowly? All right, we'll have to talk to some folks, because we've actually, those installations are occurring right now. So
perfect. Okay, good.
They are, and we are starting with the medical baseline customers. And then on the municipal side, we've been identifying critical municipal facilities to equip with batteries as well. So I think it's more been the priority level, starting with those who are affected by the power shutoffs and the critical municipal facilities. And then I'm expect that it'll be reaching everyone else soon too.
Okay, great. I just think if you let people know that, like if they put in one of those applications and somehow they know that they're not top priority, we'll get back to you when we can, that's better than not getting anything back. Because I think there are going to be people like myself that are super excited about the Resilient Home Program. Just, you know, keeping them abreast of where they fall in the order would be good.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you for that feedback. It certainly would be. We want to make sure that we're managing expectations there, because people are really excited about that program, and it's a really important program. So thank you for that feedback,
awesome.
Jill.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex.
Alex, I have a couple of questions. I'm not sure I completely understand the economics behind all of this. How are you as a joint powers agency able to more effectively purchase some of this capacity, excuse me, than PG&E, which is so much larger in scale?
Yeah, a couple of different ways. Larger isn't always better in these contexts. So the fact that EBCE is so much smaller in some ways, we have a lot less overhead. There are really three competitive advantages that a community choice public agency like EBCE or others have. And number one, we don't have shareholders to whom we have to pay a profit. So there's immediately a cost savings there. because we don't have to take ratepayer dollars and turn them into shareholder dividends. And then on top of that, we're only dealing with the generation side of the equation. So we don't have a whole lot of overhead maintaining the lines and wires. So there's cost effectiveness built in there too. As a public agency, we also don't have to pay taxes in the same way. So there's savings there. And as a public agency, we aren't, oh, excuse me, sorry. Excuse me. So really the fact that we don't have to pay the same level of taxes, we don't have to provide shareholder dividends. We can also borrow at cheaper rates. So we just got a bond rating. It hasn't been made public yet, but it will be soon. So we also have access to cheaper capital, as you know, by issuing municipal bonds. So the economics of it are actually quite favorable to the public agencies, and this has been kind of the trend historically in California too. So about a fifth of the state has been served by municipal utility districts, and historically they've had lower rates than PG&E and the investor-owned utilities.
And as more of these agencies come into play, is that going to continue to affect PG&E? And is that going to cause them to increase rates, which, because you base your rates on their rates, that's going to cause your rates to go up? And it's going to be kind of a self-defeating process?
Yeah, I certainly hope not. And then that's not the expectation. So PG&E's rates, I can't really speculate on where they'll go. You know, historically they've tended to go up, but they go up and down. But you know, I can't speak on behalf of PG&E, but PG&E, where they make their money has been historically on the transmission and distribution of the energy, not on the generating side of the equation. And this has been something that they've said many times publicly, that those are what they call pass-through charges. So it should be actually you know, to their benefit to have other entities that are providing the generation services, so that they don't have to they don't have the liability of that and have to pass it on to the ratepayers. And so they're not losing any customers on the transmission and distribution side of things. So they're still charging customers. Those charges are still on the bill. Those charges usually make up about a third to half of the bill, sometimes more. So it may mean that PG&E no longer operates in the retail side of generating energy. That, I think, is a possibility as more community choice agencies form. At this point, I think the community choice agencies are already serving about 40% of PG&E's retail customer load for generating the energy. And my guess is, as more cities and counties form or join these agencies, that trend will continue. But that's not something that PG&E is fighting at this point. It shouldn't change their bottom line when it comes to transmission and distribution, because all those customers aren't going anywhere as far as transmission and distribution goes. What could change that, though, are as more customers kind of form their own microgrids, and that will be something that I think PG&E probably wants to get ahead of and be a participant in. But yeah, I think what the real threat to PG&E is more the folks who are forming microgrids and withdrawing from the transmission and distribution charges. But that's something that's being discussed at the CPUC all the time, are how to make sure that those customers that can't afford to have solar and storage, how they're going to be insulated from that, you know, that future.
And you guys aren't looking at transmission and distribution as a potential offering?
No, not transmission and distribution. We're actually, our frontier is largely going to be battery storage and utility scale storage. So we already have hundreds of megawatts of storage contracted. We have, I believe we have about 600 megawatts of new renewable energy generating capacity contracted in the state of California. But storage is going to be critical because we want to make sure that all of that sunlight that's shining at times when people don't necessarily need to use it can be captured and then dispatched in the evening when people are definitely in need of energy. And then also electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So EBCE is working with our cities to help expand EV charging infrastructure, particularly DC fast charging. So the kind of charging that takes minutes, not hours. We're already working with our cities to develop several hubs of EV charging stations. West Oakland, Livermore, Piedmont we've already contracted with them and identified the sites to have those projects built. So no, our frontier is not going to be transmission and distribution. It's going to be storage and EV charging.
Okay, thanks.
Sure, thank you.
Over to you, Jill.
Thanks, Steve. So this, battery storage capability that you're looking at and utility scale storage, is that projected to be adequate as, cities like Pleasanton enact their climate action plan? I mean, a big part of our CAP 2.0 is the electrification of our city, and new construction is going to be first, but then they're looking at strategies for existing buildings. How are you guys planning for that added electrical capacity that we're going to need when we transition away from gas?
Yeah, thanks, Jill. Those contracts that I mentioned are the way that we're doing it. So we have 11 power purchase agreements that we've signed long-term, and those are all for new generating capacity. So, or in some cases, it's for refurbishing and upgrading existing sites, such as some of the wind farms in Altamont. But so we're signing long-term contracts for new generating capacity to have new wind and solar constructed, and that storage component as well. And so for now, those cities that are transitioning early are really helping to catalyze that, because we have to serve that load at renewable with 100% renewable right away. But by 2030, our board approved goal is to be serving everybody with 100% clean energy. And by clean, I mean a mixture of renewable and non-nuclear hydroelectric resources. So by 2030, we've got a tall order in the next 8 years or so to continue signing those contracts and getting those projects developed.
And Becky's been waiting patiently. Hello, Becky.
Yes, I have. So I am curious as to how Pleasanton is doing, particularly because the whole point of this program and the value for Pleasanton has been in emissions reduction. So I'm curious, I think there's a lot of investment by residents in solar. And I was wondering how we're doing compared to the other cities in the JPA. Also, I'm curious about our corporations and our businesses, how many are opting out? Because many businesses have pledged carbon neutrality by 2030, 2045. So the higher rates may make sense for those businesses, but I'm curious about, city policy when we approve new campuses or whatever, is, the cost of sequestering carbon can be pretty high, but this is one way that they can do that without, they just pay the bill basically. So I was curious as to how many of our businesses are opting out of the maximum program, just percentages wise.
Sure. Percentages wise, Pleasanton has looked very good since enrollment. The opt-out rate for, I don't have the business opt-out rate specifically, but for combined businesses and residential customers is right at EBC's average. So it's about 95, 96% retention. So there's an opt-out rate of about 4 or 5%, which is good. I mean, it's right in line with our averages. So the city's faring very well as far as greenhouse gas emissions on the electricity generated emissions, because when the city enrolled, it enrolled at the carbon-free option. And so since most folks stuck with that option, the city's energy-related greenhouse gas emissions have been looking good.
Mhm.
We'll see how it goes with this. This next transition will be interesting because with the previous option, it was carbon free, but it didn't cost anything more. This does cost something more. So it remains to be seen how this coming enrollment will go.
Yes.
And we've never done this before where we've transitioned a default rate post enrollment. This has only been something that we've done at initial enrollment. So, by law, everyone receives notices about this change in the mail and via email. So those notices, and that's usually when we start to see people opting out or opting down, as the case may be. Those notices just started going out last week. We haven't seen our call center has gotten a lot of calls, but there have not been a lot of opt-outs so far.
So then, is there any thought, since you can really measure how much in emissions that a business might save, sequester by participating in the maximum program, have you given any thought to assisting businesses in recovering that measured carbon sequestration in the carbon markets as a group?
Not to my knowledge. No, we haven't.
Because there's a chance they could get some of their money back. I mean, I think the price for a sequestered, bona fide metric ton of carbon has, when I first started looking at it, it was $12 a metric ton. Now in some markets, it's $35 a metric ton. So, I'm interested in having businesses look at the carbon economy and the carbon accounting as a source of revenue and support for their own environmental efforts. So I would just recommend that. The other thing I was fascinated with what you guys are doing is switching people over to induction cooking.
Yeah.
Because I love induction cooking. I hate cleaning my gas stove more than anything. And I've had it for years. And I really, every time I visit realtor.com, I see the new kitchens with these amazing, 6-burner gas things. I'm not sure that people would ever use them, but if they use them after that, they have to clean them. And so I think a little push could be made there for the joy of induction cooking, either through a city policy. I know you're going to have some units put in the library for people to experiment with, but I think you could do more, because those natural gas, that's a lot of emissions basically. And it's costly too. So anyway, just a plug for induction cooking for all the restaurants in the business community here. I think you might, develop some fun programs for that. And I think people will appreciate the time they save in the kitchen after dinner.
Thanks, Becky. Yes, our induction cooking program has been launched, and we're partnering with some local restaurants in the area as kind of promotions. It's also just for basic safety. I mean, not having a
You won't set your kitchen on fire.
Right. Indoor air pollution. Yeah, it's pretty remarkable that you can even touch them and they don't burn you.
I know.
Pretty awesome.
But thank you very much for a great presentation.
Sure. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Becky and Alex. Any other questions from the group? I was going to shift this a little bit. We've got a little bit of time, and hopefully, as you know, Alex, there was an item on the agenda last night for the council on trying to get some change on the net energy metering program with the CPUC. Can you maybe speak a little bit about that? I know that, no decision has been made yet, but, and I also heard from Kathy Narum, our council member, that if you have solar panels, as I do at my house, you'll be getting a different statement. The true up will be changing, all that kind of stuff. So maybe just a few minutes if you could spend on that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. So net energy metering or NEM for rooftop solar customers. Yeah, so it's gone through a couple iterations now. So we're at the third, and it's controversial to some extent because the CPUC has proposed, really at the prodding of the investor-owned utilities like PG&E, to change the way rooftop solar customers are credited and compensated. As the theory goes, rooftop solar has primarily been something that's been adopted by folks with the means to do it. And the concern is that there'll be a cost shift. So as those who can afford to have rooftop solar and now rooftop solar with battery storage, they're going to be leaving the kind of costs that for folks who can't do that. It's going to be burdening folks who can't afford that with higher rates. Basically, you're kind of having lower income customers subsidizing higher income customers. But there's some debate on that, especially in the more recent years, as rooftop solar installations have really been growing tremendously, exponentially. That there's an argument to be made that now it's not just high income customers who are installing rooftop solar, but it's middle and low income customers who are installing. So the goal here for EBCE and others is to try to make sure that rooftop solar stays accessible and affordable. We do want to make sure that the CPUC continues to pay attention to any sort of issues that might occur if there could be some sort of cross subsidizing from higher income customers. From low income customers to high income customers. But some of the proposals, and I'm not the one at EBCE who's representing us before the CPUC, so I'd have to defer to my colleagues on the details of it. But we want to make sure that whatever changes are made in the next iteration of net energy metering doesn't dissuade people across the board from installing solar. If there's, I think what's been proposed are like flat fees for solar customers. And we just want to make sure that wouldn't dissuade people from installing solar, because that's not going to be to anybody's benefit. When it comes to greenhouse gas reductions, local resilience, we want people to be motivated and incentivized to continue installing rooftop solar and storing it ideally. So I'm not sure where the CPUC is going to come out on this, but I know that a lot of our cities and a lot of our customers are paying close attention to it, because it could impact everyone who's contemplating putting a solar panel on their roof.
Great, thank you. Becky, did you have another question or comment? Yeah.
Yes, I did. Just regarding rooftop solar. I am a rooftop solar owner, and one of the things that happened to us was that our solar panels failed before the warranty was expired, and it's very difficult to get a service. A lot of times the original installer is gone. Dealing with SunPower in this case was very difficult. It took them over a year. They had, because solar panels have changed, they had to replace the entire system. They couldn't just plug in new panels. And I think my concern is that in our fleet of solar power generators in the city, there's a lot of people with dead systems on their roofs, because your lights don't go out when your system fails. You really have to monitor it. So a long time ago, I know, Alex, you said there was going to be maybe some, not with regard to this, but some benefits for solar generators, residential generators. I'm wondering if there's any thought given for supplemental monitoring by your agency, because people could sign up for it so that maybe they could receive an alert in their bill that their system isn't generating what it had been or what it is rated for, and you could trace that. Also good for cities to know in terms of the performance of the different manufacturers, so that people can make informed choices about the reliability of their systems. It's a very new technology. Even they tout it for 25 years, but the system design will change probably 5 times within that as they try and perfect the generation. So I think if for people making the investment, it would be nice to have some benefit also for the commercial generators too. You know, they got other things to worry about than going out in the parking lot and checking the meter. So just another suggestion, but a problem that I have run into, and I suspect others have as well for the rooftop folks.
Thanks, Becky. And just curious, when your solar stopped working, did you notice it immediately on your bill? Did you see your bill? Did you see your bill increase a lot?
Well, I have my husband he loves to watch the meter run backwards, and he also gets up on the roof and washes the panels whenever they get dusty so that he can, you know, keep the power maximized. But he noticed that when he checked the meter that the system did not seem to be generating. And, you know, it took us a while to sort of test and see, because, you know, sometimes the weather was cloudy, sometimes it's winter rather than summer, but it was clear that it was failing. And then we had somebody come out and tell us that actually one of the panels had failed, and therefore the whole system wasn't working because all the panels are linked together. And then, you know, we find out that we couldn't get it. And then the story we got was, we're too busy installing new systems to fix your old system. Somebody actually said that. So, you know, I'm just saying service and reliability is a kind of a hidden issue. All the systems work when they're new, at least for a few years, but after a while, you know, the house is sold or you just stop paying attention. And so anyway, it could have been longer if he didn't check, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that the inverters have a limited lifespan too. I know oftentimes the inverter will kick out before the solar panels do.
No, our panels went first, the inverter's fine.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of goes to the point about the argument about net energy metering, is that some of the early adopters took, you know, they kind of beta tested a lot of stuff, because I know that newer panels, I don't think some of them have the same issues where if one panel is shaded, they all go down. So it's another argument for why, you know, the customers that already have rooftop solar, their terms shouldn't be changed because they kind of took on some risk.
Right. Yeah. And even the newer panels, you know, going on Yelp or whatever, you know, we still find complaints about that, and that it, you know, it's just difficult to get service sometimes. And I think service improvement and, you know, also feedback to the manufacturers. Hey, you know, people aren't going to buy your systems if they're not reliable. So it's a new thing, sort of, and it can be perfected with the right kind of feedback and encouragement.
Well, I do like the idea of giving folks an alert if they don't notice that their bill is going up, or they think it might be due to weather or some other factor, giving them an alert that you're net energy metering, but your net is not positive, you know?
Well, you know, I think that would be a big help to people, actually. And if you have access to that information, if you can generate that for their bill, you know, as an insert in their bill, you know, call your provider, you know, time for a service checkup.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take a note of that.
Okay, thanks.
I think, Becky, I think you've created a new business niche, fixing solar panels.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, I worry about that too. I've had mine a couple of years now, and the company that installed mine is in Chapter 11. So there you go.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, thank you, Alex, so much. We've run out of time here. I think we could go on. You've obviously got we've got the folks that are really interested in this subject matter on the call today. So I hope we were helpful. You were helpful to us, and we wish you all the best. And hopefully we can get you back down the road when we see how this new system percolates through our community. So any closing comments from anybody?
Well, I'd just like to say thank you. Thank you to the group. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this. It's not something that gets a lot of attention out there. So we really appreciate the opportunity to come, especially in the business community where we know this is going to affect people's bottom lines. And Jill, thank you for your patience with the Resilient Home program. We want to make sure that we get you all installed and hooked up there. So hopefully that'll happen sooner rather than later. But thanks again to you all, and happy to come back and give an update when the time is right.
Exactly.
Alex, we will have this posted on our website, and I'll make sure to send you a link. And thank you. And if you want to forward me your slideshow, we usually include that too. So if you're okay with that, that would be awesome. So thank you all, and happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, we got a
Bye-bye.
mixer tonight at Venture X, so please join us. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Alex. Nice job.